We're here now with Lou Barta, who is running for the mayor of Hannibal, coming up for an election in April. Welcome.
Correct. Thank you.
First question for you, Lou, is what do you think is the biggest problem facing America's hometown these days?
Honestly, I can't zero it down to a single problem.
Okay.
I'd say I could pull out 5 problems that are all interrelated. First and foremost, one of the first things I talked about is our city finances. This fiscal year that began last July 1st, we started the budget with a 5.8% reserve. When I go back to 4 or 5 years ago when I was on the city council, we had a 20% reserve, which was our, for lack of a better term, our target. There is no right or wrong number, but that's where it was always trying to be as a threshold. The first time we were going below that, it was looked upon really strong with consideration and wow, we don't want to do this. Here we are 4 or 5 years later. Every year there's been a little chipping away at the budget, down to 5.8%, almost 25% of what we had as a reserve. And that money is there for catastrophes, emergencies. So it makes me nervous that we're down to that low of an amount of money with one big catastrophe, one big natural disaster away from having to borrow money. And that costs us more money when you have interest, et cetera. That situation with lack of funding causing the reserve and city finances to be squeezed has led to multiple cost-saving reductions across the years, which is a necessary thing. Along with that, every time an employee left, there have been job consolidations. A lot of people are now wearing many, many more hats than they used to in City Hall. And at the same time, that's really led to a reduction in city services. We have fewer police and fire department on the street than we had years ago. We haven't had a citywide trash cleanup day with the dumpster where people could bring all their stuff for years now. And I hear that all the time. And people are also telling me this year was one of the worst years as far as more road degradation, potholes developing. We had less city crews out striping streets and painting curbs this year than we had before. A lot of reasons were all behind all those things, but it's a consistent pattern of a reduction in city services as revenue to the city keeps shrinking. And so after, I say, those 2 features are connected to the fact that we don't really have great economic development going on. We've got a long-term program that we work with the Northeast Missouri Economic Development Council. That's sort of a big picture thing, but there's a ton of small things that we aren't doing for ourselves that literally you have to look at it as a broad canvas. You can't just do one thing and all of a sudden you're successful for economic development. You have to set the tone. You have to, one of the first things I would do is to increase people wanting to come to Northeast Missouri as far as business goes by having every mayor or city official along Route 30, excuse me, along Route 36, sign a document in support to Governor Nixon, to our local state representatives, and to MoDOT, saying that we would support their white paper on creating I-70 as a toll road for its revitalization. At this point, last numbers I saw, around 70% of the I-70 traffic was pass-through traffic through our state. The vast majority of that would be paid for by other people, other businesses, and those that don't want to pay that would naturally look for other routes. And here we have Route 36, this wonderful thing that was built not too many years ago. I remember when I was on the council being there for the celebration of its final completion as a 4-lane roadway. And it's been disappointing that we haven't seen more development along it in any part of the stretch from east to west across the state. So things like that we need to do. The 4th thing that's a real problem, I would say, is we have a housing dilemma, and that ties into economic development. When you look at any of the numbers that are out there published in places like City Data or other sources, around 41% of Hannibal residents live in what you might call some form of rental properties. The state average is 33%. So to have like 25% more than the state average is sort of nervous-making to me. And what that ties in with the fact that when you look at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th wards, the difference between the year 2000 and the year 2010 census showed about a 2.5% to 3% decrease in population in those areas. The BPW, our Board of Public Works, has seen hundreds of fewer meters out there for them to service and supply power to. But yet Hannibal's population has stayed the same. So that's showing us that we have about the same number of people but living in fewer properties. Some of these are multi-generational residences now. We're kind of going backwards from the American dream. People are being forced to go back the way it was decades ago. And a large part of that is we don't have decent middle-income housing. We have a median income level of around $36,000 for Hannibal. The average home value is $83,000, $84,000, maybe $86,000, depending on whose numbers. When you look at the building permits for the last number of years, I think from like up to 2013, the average was about $160,000 home value that the permits were taken for to build a home. well, a person who's making $36,000 isn't going to be able to afford that. And we've been tearing down what should have been our most affordable neighborhoods because so many of them turn into rental properties. And for lack of a better term, we have slumlords that don't even live in town that are milking these properties dry, barely maintaining levels of what they need to. And at a certain point, some of those just go belly up. And year after year, I was on the building commission for a while. My opponent's on it now. It's a never-ending battle. And every year, the city tears down more and more properties. Some people tear down their own, but we have these pockets created in our neighborhoods that we need to fill again. And so we need some type of manner of creating an incentive, again, part of an economic development, to have someone develop, not just building one house that's a $70,000 or $80,000 house, but perhaps a row of townhomes, a row of cluster homes, something that's got a home feel to it, that's got a backyard, a front yard, and is available for someone that if a corporation is going to transfer their employees to Hannibal, that they have options to buy, and that's something that we have a real shortage of. Okay. And the last thing would be the spike in crime. We've had, sadly, a lot of violent crime in the last couple of years really spike. Heroin is not just in Hannibal, but it's been everywhere, and I know we have new programs with HPD like the HEAT program. We have a great focus on dealing with the narcotic problem, but that's one component of it to help stop that and to take away the, I guess you can say, the nesting of where a lot of that activity occurs. We have to really address what some of the conditions are in some of the neighborhoods, and we don't have enough ability with enough personnel in City Hall, again, for enforcement. We don't have enough people on the street making sure properties are cleaned up. We don't have building codes for commercial buildings that are as stringent as they could be. And we end up with things that are public nuisances. Like at the end of the day, St. Elizabeth, everyone knows the disaster we're in right now with that. And who knows where we're going to go after it comes out of court.
Sure. What about, you mentioned the BPW, and it's been in the news as of late, it's the water quality. How concerned are you with the quality of water in Hannibal?
It's sort of a double-edged sword to me. First off, I drink the water, and I personally don't have a problem with how it tastes, at least in my home. And I live in one of the old neighborhoods. I have a home that's over 120 years old, so I have a lot of old pipes coming to my property. But on the other side, I'm a facilities director. I've been in facilities for almost 30 years now, and that is infrastructure, plumbing, electric, heating, all those things. And I know that chloramine treatments do have a negative detrimental effect on certain old systems. They can create more lead in the water. There is the potential for health issues too. You can go on the internet and find hundreds of sources of information that show respiratory issues, et cetera. The problem is there's never been a long-term health study that really proves anything. I kind of look at it as we're at a point now where we were decades ago before asbestos was proven in creating things like mesothelioma. I have a friend who died 2.5 years ago from that, only exposed to it for 3 months working at a job while he was in college. And I'm not saying chloramine is to that level, but I'm saying that while it satisfies the EPA didn't have a reason to look further into the health issues. There's a lot that's not regulated enough or known enough yet, and I would like to find out more information to give to the public. I know the board has just recently gone through a study with granulated carbon filtration and realized that even doing something like that wouldn't work because of the distance factor of the water traveling through Rawls County. But there are other options in the middle, and I think at some point we need to put those on the table too. I don't know that this problem is going to go away for a long time. We're not alone here. Quincy has the same chloramine treatment. About 40% of the United States drinks water that has chloramine treatment going through it. Some cities like St. Louis have done it for decades. And maybe in another few decades we'll know, like we looked back at smoking, what caused certain things. I'm old enough to be able to say, I remember as a kid watching doctors on TV advertising for cigarettes. Today, that sounds crazy.
Right, exactly.
So you just don't know.
Well, the way Hannibal is, the way its government is, it's a city manager form of government. Why
Correct.
do you want to be mayor?
The short answer is I want to fix a lot of things. The long answer, I guess, is more that I've been watching City Hall, City Council. I get the agendas for every meeting. I review things, watch everything. I contact people to talk about things. And while there are good things that have happened, without a doubt, to our city, the general trend, as I talked about the problems earlier, the 5 issues, has been a negative trend. And I look at our city council as not being utilized as much as it should. When people ask me, okay, why do you want to be mayor? I say, I look at the mayor's office and the city council as if it were a corporation's board of directors. Every organization that's a not-for-profit, profit, doesn't matter, they have a board of some kind. The chairman of the board, in our case would be the mayor, directs the board members to come up with decisions on what's the direction, what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, what are our problems, what is the real focus, what should we put out there to the public. Once they have their consensus, they then hire a city manager, they hire a CEO, a president, or in our case, a city manager, who implements it. His title is city manager. And that is it. It's a management position. So all the daily operations do go through our city manager, but the overall direction, and right now we're lacking things like we have no strategic plan, has been lacking. When I was first on the city council, I didn't take too many months to go down the road and realize that we were a reactionary council. We were mostly reacting to things people brought to us. There were very few things that were proactive. I worked with three of our councilmen at that time, two of whom were still on the council, for some proactive improvements, for safety issues, for neighborhood improvements. I rewrote an ordinance at that time for life safety aspects for the non-owner occupied properties, again, the rental properties. There are a lot of loopholes that some of those property owners were using to not have their properties inspected, so that was the type of thing I fought. You could call me a progressive activist guy, but I want to fix things. So. Okay.
Talk about experience. You were on the council. What does your experience bring to this role as mayor if you're elected?
Well, obviously I do have council experience, which in the past many candidates can't say always. My personal working career, between 25 and 30 years in facilities, operations, and management. So I've always had personnel issues to deal with. I've been dealing with infrastructure issues, construction issues, renovation issues, old buildings, new buildings. I have a real wide variety of, I guess you can say, of experience that to me lends well to a city like this. We have plumbing problems with our city, we have sewer issues, we have electrical issues, we have grounds issues. I have experience with that. I have decades of budget management issue because of being in operations and in management. And over the 30 years, I've worked for 3 different categories, which I think really helps me. I work for Fortune 500 corporations, so I understand how they operate. I've been things like a regional property manager, so you know how a corporation looks at cities, different from how cities look at corporations. I've worked for multi-million-dollar family businesses that depend on the localities, for their success. And for the last 8 years, I've been working for a local form of government, with the school district. So it's been enlightening because they all have different perspectives of what they need and what is important to them. And I think having a mayor that's got some of that connectivity to understand their point of view will be an asset.
Okay. What do you want voters to know about you, Lou Barta?
Well, I've said a lot of it already, I think. I'd have to say that when I left the council, one of the nicest things anyone said to me, a reporter came up to me and he shook my hand and he said, I just want to tell you that I've been covering city council activities here and other workplaces for years, and I don't think I've ever covered a city council person or an alderman that was as active or as involved in things on the council in the city as you've been while you were a councilman, and he really appreciated that. And for those that remember me and watched what I did, that's what I plan on doing again, being very active and being very progressive to fix our problems and very open to in listening to people. I tend to, I was brought up in a way that sort of, that service mentorship. I was a Boy Scout, I'm an Eagle Scout, and so trying to leave a place better than you found it has always been my perception of the way things should be.
Okay. Final question for you is, we want you to say something nice about your opponent.
Certainly. Jim and I didn't do a lot together on the council. Actually, I was on the council when he applied because of resignation, and so I had voted for him to be on the council. And we got along well. He was on the building commission with me, and we worked fine as far as things with the building commission perspective. So I don't know him personally. I just like his father, like his personality. He's a gregarious guy, and obviously, I would prefer to win, and trying to say he's, I just lost my train of thought. I think you have to edit that out.
Hey, that's good enough. That's good enough. Election day is April 5th, and I also want to point out that the mayor candidates do not have to declare a party, Republican or Democrat. It is non-political. So that is it. Lou, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Really appreciate it.
All right, again, Election day is April 5th.
Thank you very much.